Welcome, listeners, and hopefully some viewers as well. My name is Joseph Vaughan from Zuma. For those that don't know, Zuma Recruitment, we support Berlin tech businesses with all talent acquisition topics related to data professionals in Berlin. But today, our podcast, Data for Good, we will explore the world of data in relation to the shared economy and specifically shared mobility. And to help me explore that further, I'm with Fahd, Analytics Manager at Miles Mobility in Berlin. Welcome, Fahd. How are you today?
First of all, thank you, Joseph, for inviting me for this very interesting podcast. I'm happy to be here and also share my experience around mobility, data, and everything that has to do with those two topics. And yes, I'm very good, enjoying the last few days of summer here in Berlin.
Yeah, super. Me too, me too. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into this, to be honest, Fahd. It's a topic that I see from the outside, but it's a part of our changing world. But before we get into that, so people have a little bit of a background as to you, could you start by telling us, how did you first get into the world of data?
That's a very interesting question because I did not have a traditional path to data. So maybe I will just start with the beginning. So I finished my studies in industrial engineering. A few years ago. I started as I had a startup at this point of time that did not run, so it failed at some point. And then I worked in the big corporate, especially in the aerospace engineering. A few years later, I did not really like what I was doing, but thanks to the light exposure that I had to data during the time that I was working on the startup, I told myself, actually, this is something that we're talking about during 2010, 2012. And I told myself, actually, this data is the future. So I should focus on data. This is how I started thinking about this field more seriously until I ended up having a master's degree in big data and business analytics. And then I shift completely to data. First steps were in mobility. It was electric scooter manufacturer that was in Berlin, where I still live. And there I had the real steps into data. That was in 2018, 17. There, my exposure became more heavy into data till now, where I work mostly in Miles Mobility, and then we work with IoT devices, which are cars.
I see. So from aerospace to scooters and now to cars and I assume e-vehicles as well. Great. That's a very interesting path, different perspectives on the mobility world throughout that journey. Excellent. People are seeing the urban experience changing. The world's becoming more populated in certain areas, and the landscape of buildings and cities and streets is also changing. So what's the impact that shared mobility is having on the urban experience for people like me?
That's an interesting question. So, I had, as you already mentioned, I had a few short steps on different types of mobility until here I'm working in the pure shared mobility. So what we have to know, shared mobility, that's something that started around 2010, and it had a very big increase in terms of B2C with customers in around 2015, 2014. Mainly, we had at this point of time short or last and first mile mobility options. And then throughout time, it developed while the internet and everything that has to do with network has developed. That's a little bit of the background of the shared mobility. in terms of impact, it changed drastically. Now you have, instead of taking, for example, the metro, you can take a kick scooter, for example, or you can take a moped, or you can even take a car if you want to go to, like, for example, a lake around the city. But one thing that we have to understand that in general, shared mobility, or in specifically the car sharing mobility, is not a competitor of public transport, because this is what people would think of. But actually, this is more of a useful supplement. I mean, of course, individual trips can shift when a new mode of transport is offered in a city, but studies show that people even use more public transport when also using car sharing, for example.
Why is that?
I mean, because people, they think that actually, since I used shared mobility service, then now I have to use also the public transport. So this is also a self-consciousness that is being increased in people's minds.
I suspect it would be the same with my own experience as well. My eyes would be opened, and therefore specifically when I go on holidays, I particularly use these options. Okay.
Yeah, especially in touristic cities. I mean, you don't want to tend to take public transport, because you also want to see what's happening in the city itself and experience it more and more.
And are you finding that not only with Miles Mobility's presence in Berlin, but are you noticing that cities are becoming much more receptive and accommodating to shared mobility, or is there some lag in this world?
So here you have two things. You have the city authorities, and you also have the people, so the customers or the citizens. Authorities, they are also learning how car sharing is impacting the city. So you have, like, here talking about car sharing, but also talking about the shared mobility. There is less congestions. If we talk from a car perspective, it's more appealing for tourists. It also comes with other cons, of course, and that's something that the authorities that are working on. We don't see that they are very hesitant. It really depends on one city to the other, one country to the other, but we don't really see a huge hesitance from the authorities. And of course, people, they travel, and thanks to traveling, they also see those different types of mobility services. So that's how they can, they ask themselves, why do I don't have it in my city? So once you have a new operator in use in that city, they are already trained to use that new mobility service.
And in relation to us and data for good, how is data proactively used in your world?
So
in the shared mobility
here,
world, that is.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe here I just give a little bit of focus on Miles, what Miles is doing, and how we are actually using data at Miles. So Miles Mobility is the largest independent car sharing company in Germany. And of course, we provide an alternative mobility solution to private car ownership as part of people's personal mobility mix. And on average, every Miles car replaces 5 private cars, which is already a good point in terms of sustainability and reducing congestion in the cities. There is also one thing that is happening with Miles, is that Miles was born during the digital era. So it started in 2017. What does that mean? It means that everyone who's working inside, like at Miles, has also a digital background. That's one thing. And also, whenever we talk about cars and shared mobility, we are talking about IoT devices. So those are connected devices, which means you have a lot of data being collected. Going back a little bit, just one step backwards, at Miles, I think now we are a little bit over than 300 employees, and we handle all the processes in-house, from the workshop to customer care to field operations. What does that mean? It means whenever you imagine, like, you open a car, so what do we collect from there? Open, close the door, ignition on and off, windows open, closed. All those are events that we are collecting, and then we are also using to make sure that the customer has access to the right vehicle in the right place. What we also have, since we are owning the full value chain of the shared mobility, which means from the workshop, once we infleet a new car and then this car had an accident, it's us who takes care of the repair jobs. What does that mean? It means also a lot of data behind this. Once you have also, for example, the customer care interactions, or customer service interactions. Here you have a lot of calls, emails. So here we are talking about so many data points. When we talk even also about driving behavior versus accidents, we can tell already how many accidents we can expect based on this driving behavior. And this data, we are using it pretty much every day. And I think, I'm sure that all the departments at Miles Mobility, they are 100% data driven. So they cannot basically take a decision without looking at the numbers. Of course, there is one part that is gut feelings, but this is more for the long-term decisions. But when we talk about short, mid-term decisions, this is purely a data-driven decision.
Data management, not only of all operations across Miles Mobility by digital and data natives, but data management of anything that goes on within and without the shared units, let's say the shared vehicles.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
So continuous improvement of all of those areas based on what you can do with data. Can you give me an example of perhaps an innovation that you've brought to the service from the perspective of data?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the first thing that I would think about is putting the right car at the right time for the right customer. In the past, our operations was based on the knowledge of our operation managers, because they know the city, they know that this area is cold, this area is hot. So if I would put a car there, it's going to be rented. But throughout the time, we collected a lot of data through different years, and we shifted a little bit more into more data-driven decisions there. What does that mean? You just take, you have an area, and with a couple of parameters that you set up with the different teams that they can impact, you tell them, hey, if you put a car at this point of time, at this point of day, like during this, like at this day, then the car is going to be rented by this customer or that customer or that customer. And you increase the probability of the car to be rented. So from a pure business perspective, this is good for us. And also from a customer perspective, because you just bring the car next to him, which is around 300 or 400 meters away, which is 3-4 minutes walking. And that's something that we are still currently doing, which is basically, this is a machine learning model. Behind it, you just learn from the area, and then you also change your offer based on the behaviors of the customers who are there. When it rains, it does not mean that you have the same behavior when it does not. Summer is not winter. Those things that also are we're trying to see, and with that we're also looking at different areas in the cities that we are operating in, so that we can serve more customers.
All this has a great impact on the customer experience. I can see making every step easier for me, the user, to engage with your products.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned machine learning for a moment there. How about AI? How is that being used in the field of mobility at Miles or otherwise, or how will it be used?
Yeah, so AI, that's a buzzword. Everyone is going crazy about it, and there I have a little bit of a strong opinion there. So I always think that if you want to use AI, you have to understand already what you have in terms of historical data. This is very important before using AI. It's just like, yeah, okay, we heard that AI, machine learning, and all those topics are current topics. Yeah, let's just hire a team of 10 people and let's just do this. No, it should not be, that's not should be the approach. The approach should be, okay, let's understand first historically what we have, use the maximum of what we have, and then slightly move to machine learning a little bit, and then move it to AI. So currently at Minds, we are not using any AI advanced algorithms. We are mostly now focusing a little bit on machine learning, the topic that I mentioned in operations. And there's also another topic which is mainly related to customer segmentations. So a little bit around churn. I mean, also making sure that if a customer goes from segment 1 to segment 2, what should I do from a pure marketing perspective? But pure AI, that's something that I would think that it's a bit of a next level, because we still believe that not only at Minds, but many companies, they do not use all the potential that they have in their the data that they own from a pure historical perspective.
Yeah, I see that often, particularly with German businesses that we work with, that data is not yet fully utilized, but hopefully conversations like this and businesses that are connected in the data field are all helping each other to propel the use of data. Another topic that comes up, and you alluded to it earlier, with people wanting to be more conscientious. So with that, and Miles's completely data-driven culture, what are you doing at Miles to be sustainable?
We are doing different things, but maybe I'll just focus on the one that is mostly related to data. So at Miles, we are electrifying our fleet. That's something that we have started 1 year ago. I think now we are almost at 8-10% of our fleet that is being electrified, so e-vehicles. We have ID3s, Volkswagen, and we also have Teslas. And then, yeah, we are the first shared mobility service provider that brought the Teslas into the fleet. So that's something that we are doing. One of the things that also that is coming with the EV vehicles is more data points, because here we're talking about charging. We're talking about more data points coming from those vehicles. What we try to do there, because what we see, or what we saw in the last couple of months when we started electrifying our fleet, is that the customers, they are a little bit hesitant with whenever we talk about e-vehicles. If they have the chance to choose between a gas or normal vehicle and an e-vehicle, they would probably go for an e-vehicle. A gas vehicle. Yeah, that's because they are not very well, I would say, trained to get around the gas vehicles. So there, what we're trying to do, we are trying to make sure, of course, with the marketing team, hey, you can use this e-vehicle in this way and that way. That's one thing. And also the second thing is making sure that all the vehicles are charged and put in the right place, because there you have to think about the route that you're going to optimize to put the vehicle in the right place, because you have a range, you have charging, and these things you have to use data in order to build the proper right route for all those vehicles. And then now we are at 8%. Of course, in the future, we're going to grow a little bit more, and then data will be major factor in the e-vehicle world.
So what I've taken from that is there's an education piece for the users, and that will come as usage increases, but there's also operational optimizations that are happening back end with data to help the business be more sustainable. That's very positive to hear.
Maybe just one thing here to keep in mind: e-vehicles. It's very complex and expensive to operate. You take like the range problem, the purchase price is very high. You need that charging infrastructure, and here it's not only a work from shared mobility provider, but also from different cities. So the more infrastructure or developed infrastructure we have, the more we offer, and the more also data we collect, and the better we become.
Interesting. Fahd, conscious of time, but this is a really exciting topic. If I'm speaking with data professionals who are interested in getting into the world of shared mobility, what should they be focusing on right now to help them get there?
So you have two things. You have the shared mobility and you have data. And that's something that I'm also being asked a lot with my students that I'm teaching in one of the masters here in Berlin. How do I get into data? How do I get into mobility? Mobility is exciting because of the amount of data that you have in it, especially the shared mobility. So maybe I'll just start with the, in general, data. Why? Because data offers the opportunity to work everywhere you want. Can be from finance to shared mobility to aerospace to whatever you want. The first thing that I would think is, you need to have an analytical mind. So you need to know to ask the right question, because data itself does not talk if you do not torture it. So you need to ask yourself the right question to use the data. That's the very first thing. But if you take one step backwards and you say, hey, actually I don't have any data. How do I start my first steps there? There are a lot of courses around. Data now is not something that is like the knowledge of data is not something very new. There are so many videos, so many resources that you can that everyone can watch. And from there are also many projects in Kaggle, for example, that they can work on. And this is how they can showcase their knowledge of data. This is very important if you don't have a background in engineering, as an example, or computer science, mathematical, and so on. It's very important to have a little bit of a hands-on experience on those different topics. That's one thing. And also the second thing, coming from Berlin, it's very important to know that in Berlin, people or hiring managers, including me, we love SQL. So SQL, it's a must. It's not even something that you can negotiate. Going from a working student to junior to a senior position.
That would be my expectation too. I have not recruited for any positions in the data field that did not have some demand for a knowledge of SQL or SQL development. So yeah, that's
yeah. So that's that from a pure hands-on experience, SQL, and then it really depends on where you would like to develop. Do you would like to be in data science? Then it's Python. Then if you want to be in data engineering, then it's a little bit of more than Python there. But in general, pure data analyst, SQL, or SQL is a must. From there, it's also what I think that is very important. If you want to work in shared mobility, you don't really need to know what shared mobility is and how data is structured there. I myself, when I started at Miles, I had no clue how data is structured there. But what you have to show is your motivation and eagerness to learn more. And that's the key factor, or the key difference between one who is really good and one who is average good, I would say.
Interesting. Miles, you've educated me and hopefully our listeners and viewers today about shared mobility and how data is used within that domain. We're about to go into another topic, and that is you seemingly helping data professionals to advance their career. I think we should save that for another podcast.
For sure, I will be more than happy to share my experience around data professional and how to get more experience in that field.
That's fantastic. Super. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Thanks very much, Fahd, for your time and your insights on this really, really exciting topic. And I'd suggest if any of the listeners or viewers have questions or feedback or comments, feel free to reach out to me at Zuma or to Fahd directly as well. I'll post links to both of us to follow up on that. Thanks, Fahd.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joseph, for the opportunity to share my knowledge here. And I hope that I brought a little bit of brightness to this topic.
No doubt. You've shed some light on it. Thanks very much, and see you next time.